He was just the quiet man in the back row until the night my family tried to shut us down. They thought I was a broke teacher begging for scraps and planned to have him declared incompetent. They did not know he was my grandfather who owned half the skyline. By the time he stood up, I had already wired the building with microphones, turning their intervention into a criminal confession and directing the final act of their total downfall. My name is Harper Alexander, and at 30 years old, my life is measured in lighting cues, safety pins, and the amount of gaffer tape it takes to hold a crumbling dream together. I stood in the wings of the Everbridge Community Arts Center, a drafty brick building that smelled perpetually of sawdust and old velvet, watching a 12-year-old boy named Leo try to remember his lines while wearing a costume made of painted cardboard. This was my kingdom. It was small, it was underfunded, and it was currently located in the forgotten pocket of Marigold City, Pennsylvania. But it was mine. My family liked to tell people that I was going through a phase. They called my career a cute hobby, something I would eventually grow out of when I realized that art did not pay the bills. They were right about the bills part. My bank account usually hovered around double digits, and I lived in a studio apartment that was mostly a closet with a window. But they were wrong about the rest. I was not playing pretend. I was building things. Every time I fixed a torn backdrop or coaxed a shy teenager into stepping into the spotlight, I was constructing something real. I was building confidence. I was building a sanctuary. Tonight was the opening night of Winter on Cedar Street, our holiday production. The backstage area was a controlled explosion of energy. There were 20 kids running around, fueled by sugar and adrenaline. It was chaos, but it was a safe chaos. I moved through the throng of small bodies like a traffic cop, checking props and tying shoelaces. Ms. Harper. My snowflake fell off. A little girl wailed, holding up a piece of glittery foam. "It is okay. Maya," I said, kneeling down and pulling a safety pin from the band of my wrist. "We will fix it. You are going to be the best snowflake out there." I made sure they were safe. That was rule number 1. The world outside these walls could be cold and indifferent. But in here, nobody got hurt. In here, everyone had a part to play. I checked the rigging for the 3rd time that night, ensuring the heavy velvet curtain was secure. I checked the floor for loose cables. I was the director, the stage manager, the janitor, and the guardian. When the house lights dimmed and the stage lights flooded the wooden boards, I slipped to my usual spot in the tech booth to watch. The theater was about half full. Mostly parents, a few supportive teachers, and some locals looking for cheap entertainment. And him, he was there. He was always there. I looked toward the back corner of the auditorium, the seat that was technically G14 but was usually obscured by the shadow of the overhang. He was sitting there, just like he had for every single production over the last 2 years. He was a thin man, frail-looking, but with a straight spine. He wore a dark wool coat that looked expensive, but at least 20 years out of date, and a battered fedora rested on his knee. I called him the corner man. I did not know his name. I did not know why he came. We put on everything from Shakespeare to experimental modern dance, and some of it was objectively terrible, but he never missed a show. He never sat in the front. He never spoke to anyone. He just sat in the darkness, his hands folded over the handle of a wooden cane, watching the stage with an intensity that made me feel like he was seeing something the rest of us missed. "He is back again," the volunteer usher, a college student named Sarah, whispered to me earlier. "Do you think he sleeps here like maybe he hides in the basement during the day?" "No," I had said with a laugh. "He probably just likes the heat. It is cheaper than paying for gas at home." But I watched him now as the kids sang the opening number. He was not sleeping. His eyes caught the reflection of the stage lights, shining in the gloom. When the song ended and the parents erupted into applause, he clapped too. He did not clap loud. He kept his hands low, barely making a sound, but he clapped for a long time. He clapped until the curtain fully closed. It was a respectful, deliberate applause. It felt like a benediction. The show ended without disaster. The parents flooded the lobby to collect their children. Flowers were exchanged, and the noise level rose to a deafening roar. I was in the middle of helping Leo out of his cardboard tree costume when the air in the room seemed to shift. It became colder, heavier. I looked up and saw them. The Caro clan had arrived. My aunt, Vivian Caro, stood in the doorway of the dressing room, looking like she had just stepped out of a magazine spread for luxury living. She was wearing a fur coat that probably cost more than our entire annual budget. Beside her stood my cousin Brittany and Brittany's husband, Trent. They were glowing with the distinct sheen of people who had just come from a very expensive party and had drunk very expensive champagne. "Harper," Vivian said. Her voice was smooth, like polished glass, and just as hard. "We missed the curtain call. The traffic from the gala was absolute murder." "It is fine, Aunt Vivian," I said, wiping a smudge of grease paint off my cheek. "The show started at 7. You are 2 hours late." "Well, you can hardly expect us to leave the Real Estate Association dinner early for a children's play," Brittany said. She was scrolling through her phone, the blue light illuminating her perfectly contoured face. Brittany was the golden child. She was the vice president of marketing for Caro and Crestline Developments. I was just the cousin who played with puppets. Trent looked around the backstage area, his nose wrinkling as if he smelled something rotting. "Jesus, Harper, this place is falling apart. Look at that ceiling. That is a code violation waiting to happen. It passes inspection every year." "Trent," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we make do with what we have." "It is depressing," Vivian said, stepping gingerly over a coil of rope. "Honestly, Harper, I do not know how you do it. You are 30 years old. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life in a dusty room with other people's children?" "I am the director here. Vivian, this is my job." Brittany laughed, a short, sharp sound. "A job is something that has a 401k and a future. Harper, this is charity work, except you are the one who needs the charity." I bit the inside of my cheek. I was used to this. This was the family dynamic. I was the orphan. The charity case, the one Vivian had taken in out of obligation after my parents died. They liked to remind me of my place. They were the skylines and the penthouses. I was the basement and the dust. "So," Trent said, checking his watch, "are we going to dinner, or are you sleeping here with the rats tonight?" "Actually," Vivian said, smoothing her gloves, "that brings us to the change of plans. We have booked a suite at the Skyline Crest for the night. Just one suite. It has 2 bedrooms. Obviously, Brittany and Trent need their privacy, and I need my rest." I knew where this was going. I felt the familiar cold sink into my stomach. "We assumed you would need to stay here anyway," Vivian continued, her eyes scanning the room with disdain. "Someone needs to watch this. Equipment. You know how this neighborhood is. If you leave these lights unguarded, they will be gone by morning." "You want me to sleep here?" I asked. "In the theater." "It is just for one night." "Harper," Brittany said, not looking up from her screen. "Do not be dramatic. You have done it before. Besides, you fit in better here. The skyline is a bit much for you, is it not?" They stood there, waiting for me to argue, waiting for me to beg for a spot on the sofa in their luxury suite. I would not give them the satisfaction. "Fine," I said. "I have inventory to do anyway." "Good," Vivian said. She reached out and patted my cheek. It was not a gesture of affection. It was the way one pets a stray dog. "You are such a trooper, Harper, always willing to take one for the team, even if you are not really on the team." They turned and swept out of the room, leaving a trail of expensive perfume that clashed violently with the smell of sweat and paint. I watched them go. I watched them walk out the back door, laughing about something Trent had said, heading toward their luxury car and their luxury hotel. I was alone. The theater was silent now. The kids were gone. The parents were gone. The lights in the lobby were off. I locked the main doors and walked back to the prop room. It was a small, windowless space filled with fake furniture and period costumes. I pulled a few old blankets out of a trunk. They smelled of mothballs and lavender. I made a bed on the floor, pushing aside a plastic sword and a basket of fake fruit. the floor was hard, and the room was drafty. I sat down on the makeshift mattress and hugged my knees to my chest. I was 30 years old, and I was sleeping on the floor of a prop room while my family drank wine in a penthouse. It was not just the physical discomfort, it was the erasure. It was the way they looked at me, the way they looked at this place, as if none of it mattered, as if I did not matter. I was just a ghost in their periphery, the poor relation they kept around to make themselves feel benevolent. I lay down and stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains. I felt small. I felt like a child again, waiting for someone to come and pick me up. But knowing no one was coming, after a while, I realized I had forgotten to turn off the ghost light, the single bulb left burning on stage to keep the spirits away and prevent people from falling into the orchestra pit. I sighed and pushed myself up. I walked out onto the stage. The auditorium was a cavern of shadows. The single bulb on the stand cast long, eerie shapes across the empty rows of velvet seats. I reached for the switch on the wall, but my hand froze. Something moved. I squinted into the darkness. At the very back of the house, in the far corner, a shadow detached itself from the gloom. It was him, the corner man. He had not left, or maybe he had waited until everyone else was gone. I held my breath, standing just out of the light so he could not see me. He moved slowly, painfully. He was leaning heavily on his cane. He did not head straight for the exit. Instead, he was walking along the back row of seats. He paused at seat G14. He reached out with a gloved hand and touched the back of the chair. He ran his hand along the worn velvet fabric. It was a caress. It was the way a person touches the face of a lover they have not seen in years. He stood there for a long moment, just staring at the empty stage where I had stood hours ago. He looked tired. He looked incredibly lonely. Then, he turned and walked slowly toward the rear exit. He pushed the heavy door open, letting in a slice of street lamp light and swirling snow, and then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood there in the silence, my heart beating a little faster. I did not know why. But seeing him there, seeing that strange, quiet moment of connection between the old man and this crumbling building, made the cold in my chest ease just a fraction. I was not the only one who haunted this place. I turned off the ghost light, plunging the theater into total darkness, and went back to my pile of blankets on the floor. I did not know it then, but the man in the corner was not just a ghost. He was the storm that was about to break, and I was standing right in the eye of it. The email that threatened to end my world arrived on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between a coupon for discount paint supplies and a spam message about car warranties. It was a digital eviction notice, polite and lethal. The subject line read, "Notice of redevelopment and lease termination. Everbridge Community Arts Center." I sat in my cramped kitchen, staring at the screen of my cracked laptop until the words blurred together. The sender was a holding company I recognized immediately, Caro and Crestline Developments, my family. They were not just kicking us out, they were erasing us. The attachment detailed a gleaming new future for our block, a monstrosity of glass and steel called Cedar Line Lofts, luxury apartments with a rooftop infinity pool, a pet spa, and a ground-floor juice bar where a 12-ounce smoothie would cost $15. To build it, they needed to flatten the brick-and-mortar soul of the neighborhood. They needed to flatten my theater. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation rise in my throat, a taste I had known since I was 10 years old. That was the year my mother died of ovarian cancer, leaving me alone in a world that felt too big and too loud. My father had died 3 years prior in a highway accident, a drunk driver crossing the median on I-95. I was an orphan, a word that felt like it belonged in a Victorian novel, not modern Pennsylvania. My Aunt Vivian took me in. She liked to tell people she did it out of the goodness of her heart, but even at 10, I knew the truth. She did it because it looked good. It was a public relations move, a way to polish the family name. "We have been so good to you, Harper," she would say, whenever I forgot to clear the table or left a book on the living room sofa. "We have given you a home when you had nothing." But it was never a home. It was a house where I occupied space. I slept on a pull-out sofa in the den for the first 6 months until they finally cleared out a storage room in the attic. I wore Brittany's old clothes, the things she had deemed out of fashion or slightly stained. I remember wearing a pair of designer jeans to middle school that were 2 inches too short, the cuffs fraying around my ankles, while Brittany walked ahead of me in a brand new skirt, pretending she did not know who I was. I grew up with the distinct feeling of being a parasite. I was the poor relation, the stain on the pristine tablecloth of the Caro success story, at Thanksgiving dinners. I sat at the corner of the table, the spot where the table leg made it impossible to sit comfortably. I learned to eat quickly and quietly, to make myself small, to be grateful for the scraps. And then there was the story of Gordon Hale. It was the bedtime story Vivian told to keep us in line, a cautionary tale about failure. Your grandfather, she would say, swirling her Chardonnay, had it all. He owned the rail lines, he moved steel across this country, and he threw it all away. According to the family lore, Gordon Hale was a gambling addict who had lost his fortune on bad bets and worse investments. He was the reason the family had to start over and claw their way back to respectability through real estate. He was described as weak, senile, and useless, a burden. Do not be like Gordon, Vivian would warn me when I said I wanted to study art. He followed his whims, and look where he is now, living in a rented room, mind gone, pockets empty, a tragedy. I believe them. Why would I not? I never saw him. Vivian said it was too painful to visit him, that he did not recognize anyone anyway. He was just a ghost story, a specter of failure that haunted the edges of our lives. So I did the only thing I could. I ran. I took out student loans that felt like a mortgage on my soul, $60,000 of debt that I would probably be paying off until I was 70 and went to college to study theater directing. I wanted to build worlds where I controlled the narrative. When I came back to Marigold City, I did not go back to Vivian's house. I rented a studio apartment above a bakery that smelled like yeast and exhaust fumes, and I poured everything I had into the Everbridge Center. The neighborhood was changing. You could see it in the way the old diners were closing, replaced by boutique coffee shops that sold $4 muffins. The working-class families who had lived here for 3 generations were being pushed out by rent hikes. Everbridge was the last stand. It was where the kids from the housing projects could come after school and be kings and queens for 3 hours. It was where we told stories that mattered. And now, Vivian and Trent wanted to turn it into a lobby for tech bros. I called Vivian immediately after reading the email. It went to voicemail. I called Trent. Voicemail. Finally, I drove to the Caro and Crestline headquarters, a glass tower that loomed over the city like a middle finger to the poor. I forced my way past the receptionist, storming into Vivian's office. She was sitting behind a desk that was larger than my bed, looking over blueprints with Trent. You cannot do this, I said, slamming the printout of the email onto the mahogany surface. You cannot tear down Everbridge. We have a lease. Vivian did not even blink. She looked up over her reading glasses, her expression one of mild annoyance, as if I were a fly buzzing near her salad. The lease has a redevelopment clause. Harper, she said calmly, we own the land. The lease is month to month now. You should have read the fine print. That center is the only thing keeping those kids off the street, I argued, my voice shaking. We have 70 students. We have a senior citizen choir. We have value, Trent laughed. He was leaning against the window, looking down at the city he was slowly buying piece by piece. Value is a number. Harper, it is not a feeling. The market value of that lot has tripled in the last 5 years. It is the highest and best use of the property, a community theater that is a waste of square footage. We are talking about people, I said, not square footage. You are so emotional, Brittany said, walking in from the hallway with a latte in her hand. Just like Grandpa Gordon, always thinking with your heart instead of your head. Look, we are not monsters. We have discussed it. Once the Cedar Line lofts are built, we can offer you a job. We need a concierge for the front desk. You are good with people. It pays $15 an hour plus benefits. I felt the blood drain from my face. A concierge, a receptionist in the building that destroyed my life's work. I would rather starve, I said. You already are starving, sweetie, Brittany said, sipping her foam. We are trying to help you. I walked out of that office with my hands shaking, but it was not fear, it was rage. I went back to the theater, and I worked. I threw myself into winter on Cedar Street, determined that if this was our last season, it would be magnificent. And that was when I started really noticing him, the corner man. Once I started looking for him, I realized he was not just a random occurrence. He was a constant. I went back through the box office logs in my head. He had been there for the spring musical. He had been there for the experimental one-act festival that only 10 people attended. He had been there for the summer youth showcase. He was always in the back corner. Seat G14. He never spoke. He never mingled during intermission. He just watched. One night, about a week after the eviction notice, I was counting the donations in the lobby box. It was a pathetic haul, mostly loose quarters and a few crumpled $1 bills. But at the bottom of the plastic bin, I found a small white envelope. It was plain, cheap stationery. Inside, there were 5 $20 bills. Crisp, clean bills. $100 for a theater running on fumes. $100 was a fortune. It could buy paint for a new set or replace 3 burnt-out stage lights. On the flap of the envelope, written in shaky pencil, were 2 letters, G, H, and below that, for the kids' lights. I stared at the initials. G, H. My brain tried to make sense of it. Good Human Grateful Heart, General Hospital. I laughed at myself. It was probably just some lonely retiree in the neighborhood who liked the noise of the children. I put the money in the petty cash box and used it to buy gels for the spotlights. I did not connect the dots. Why would I? In my mind. Gordon Hale was a senile invalid rotting away in a state facility somewhere, or living in a basement playing solitaire with a deck of missing cards. That was the story. That was the truth I had been fed since I was 10 years old. The idea that the man in the expensive but worn coat could be my grandfather was as impossible as me winning the lottery, but the universe has a way of tightening the noose before it kicks the chair out. 2 days later, the rumors started. I was at the grocery store, buying ramen noodles and clearance rack vegetables, when I ran into Mrs. Higgins, the town gossip who worked as a paralegal at the courthouse. "Oh, Harper," she said, clutching my arm with her cold fingers. "I heard about your family. Such a difficult decision." "What decision?" I asked, bracing myself for comments about the theater demolition. "About your grandfather," she whispered conspiratorially. "I heard Cole Sanderson filing the paperwork, involuntary commitment to a memory care facility, and full guardianship. It must be so hard for Vivian to make that choice, but I suppose it is for the best if he is, gone." I froze. "Guardianship." "Yes, dear. They say he is a danger to himself. Wandering the streets, confused." My stomach turned over. If they put him in a facility, he would never get out. They would lock him away and throw away the key. It fit perfectly with their narrative. The useless old man was finally becoming too much trouble to keep free. I walked home in a daze. The pieces were swirling in my head: the theater demolition, the guardianship, the cruelty of my aunt and cousins. It felt like a coordinated attack, a cleaning of house. They were sanitizing their lives, removing the embarrassing theater cousin and the embarrassing senile father in one fell swoop to make way for their shiny new condo empire. When I got back to my apartment, there was a heavy cream-colored envelope shoved under my door. It was not a bill, it was an invitation. The cardstock was thick and textured, the kind that cost $5 a sheet. Embossed gold letters shimmered under my cheap hallway light. "You are cordially invited to the Winter Heights Gala, hosted by Caro and Crestline Developments, at the Skyline Crest Hotel Ballroom. Saturday, December 18th, 7 o'clock in the evening." There was a sticky note attached to the front in Brittany's looping handwriting. "Bring a nice dress. Try not to look like you work in a basement. We need a united front for the investors." B. I stared at the invitation. a united front. They wanted me there as a prop. They wanted to parade the whole happy family in front of the city council and the investors to prove that they were benevolent community leaders. Look, we even take care of the poor art teacher cousin. We are good people. Give us the permits. I wanted to burn it. I wanted to tear it into confetti and mail it back to them. But then I thought about the theater. I thought about the eviction notice. I thought about the rumors Mrs. Higgins had shared. If I went to this gala, I would be in the same room as the people destroying my life. I would be in the room with their lawyers, their investors, their secrets. If I was going down, I was going to go down fighting. I would go to their party. I would drink their champagne, and I would find a way to stop them. I did not know then that the man in the corner, the man who signed his envelopes G.H., had received an invitation too. I did not know that while I was planning a desperate plea, he was planning a war. I looked at the invitation one last time, then pinned it to my wall next to the eviction notice. The stage was set. The players were called. I just hoped I knew my lines. The Skyline Crest Hotel smelled of money. It was a specific scent, a blend of fresh lilies, expensive leather polish, and the metallic tang of chilled champagne. I stood in the lobby, clutching my clutch purse that I had bought at a thrift store for $6, feeling like an intruder in a temple built for gods I did not believe in. The invitation had said 7 o'clock, but the family had arrived at 6 to orchestrate their entrance. I had been summoned under the guise of representing the arts community, a token gesture to make Caro and Crestline Developments look like they cared about culture before they bulldozed it. But the moment I stepped onto the marble floor of the grand foyer, the illusion shattered. "Harper, thank God you are here," Vivian said, rushing toward me. She was wearing a silver gown that looked like liquid mercury. "The event coordinator is having a meltdown. We need someone at the welcome desk to handle the coat check tickets and the VIP lanyards. Brittany is too busy with the press." I blinked, my hand tightening on my purse. "Vivian, I thought I was here to sit at the table." "You said, 'Plans change, darling.'" She cut me off, her smile tight and devoid of warmth. "We need a united front. Yes, but we also need competence at the door. You are so good at organizing things, just for the first hour. Then you can sneak in the back." She did not wait for an answer. She snapped her fingers at a passing waiter, grabbed a glass of champagne, and pivoted toward a group of men in dark suits who looked like they owned small countries. So there I was, the director of the Everbridge Community Arts Center, the woman who could coax a Shakespearean monologue out of a shy teenager, reduced to a glorified cloakroom attendant. I stood behind the linen-draped table, smiling until my face hurt, taking cashmere coats from women who looked through me as if I were part of the furniture. Brittany was nearby, standing in front of a 10-foot-tall ice sculpture of the proposed Cedar Line lofts. She was holding her phone up, live streaming to her 50,000 followers. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice pitching up an octave. "We are here at the Winter Heights Gala. Look at this turnout. We are raising so much awareness for the future of Marigold City. It is all about family. It is all about legacy." She spun the camera around, catching me in the frame for a split second before panning away, as if realizing that my off-rack dress and tired eyes ruined the aesthetic. "And we have so many surprises tonight," she continued. "Swipe up to donate to the redevelopment fund." I gritted my teeth and hung another mink coat on the rack. I felt invisible, but invisibility was a superpower I had honed over 30 years, and tonight I decided to use it. Around 8 o'clock, the flow of guests slowed to a trickle. The heavy double doors to the ballroom were propped open, letting the sound of a string quartet drift into the hallway. I told the actual hotel staff member that I needed a bathroom break and slipped away from the table. I did not go to the bathroom. I walked to the edge of the ballroom doors and peered inside. The room was a sea of black ties and glittering jewels. Crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from the ceiling, casting a golden light over the circular tables. It was loud, a roar of polite laughter and business deals being struck over filet mignon. And then I saw him. My breath hitched in my throat. He was sitting at a small table in the far back corner, near the service entrance. It was the worst seat in the house, the kind of table they set up last minute for an unexpected guest. He was alone, the corner man. He was wearing a tuxedo, but it was old. The lapels were wide, the style from a different era, and the fabric looked slightly shiny at the elbows. But his posture was identical to how he sat in my theater. His hands were folded over the head of his cane. His back was straight. He was not eating the salad in front of him. He was watching the room. He watched the crowd the same way he watched my plays, intense, observant, analyzing the blocking, the lighting, the performance. Why was he here? A waiter breezed past him, ignoring his empty water glass. A woman in a red dress bumped his chair and didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He just sat there, a quiet island in a storm of vanity. Seeing him here, treated with the same casual disregard that I was, made a strange spike of protectiveness flare in my chest. He looked like a ghost haunting a banquet of vultures. I needed to get closer. I needed to know who he was. I pulled out my phone, pretending to search for a signal, and moved down the side corridor that ran parallel to the ballroom. The carpet here was thick, silencing my footsteps. I passed a series of small conference rooms, most of them dark, but the third door was cracked open about 2 inches. A sliver of light spilled out onto the carpet, and I heard a voice I recognized. It was Trent. "The valuation is solid, Cole, but the timing is the issue. We need the liquidity by the 1st of the month to break ground." I froze. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew I should keep walking. I knew nothing good came from listening to Caro family business, but my feet refused to move. "The liquidity exists, Trent," a smooth, oily voice replied. That had to be Cole Sanderson, the family's shark of a lawyer. "The problem is access. The Hale Horizon Trust is locked down tight. Gordon set it up that way 40 years ago. It is bulletproof." Gordon, my grandfather. "Nothing is bulletproof," Vivian's voice cut in. It was sharp, impatient. "We have discussed this. The competency hearing is on Monday. Once the judge grants the guardianship, I become the trustee. I can move the assets wherever I see fit for his care and investment security." I held my breath. Guardianship. They were talking about taking control of his life. "And you are sure the judge will buy it?" Trent asked. "The old man is quiet, but he is not a vegetable." "He is close enough," Brittany said. I could hear the smirk in her voice. "I saw him the other day talking to a parking meter. He is gone. Trent, his brain is mush." "We have the medical report," Vivian said. "Dr. Laird was very cooperative. He wrote that Gordon suffers from advanced dementia with delusions of the past. The report states that Gordon spends his evenings wandering around, believing he is inspecting his old properties." "Specifically," Cole added, the sound of papers shuffling echoing in the small room, "we are building the narrative that he is stuck in a loop. We are claiming he thinks he is visiting the old Palace Theater, you know, the one that burned down 30 years ago. We say he sits in the dark, clapping for plays that are not happening. It paints a picture of a man completely detached from reality." My blood turned to ice. He sits in the dark, clapping for plays. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It knocked the wind out of me. The corner man, the man in seat G14, the man who never missed a show, the man who put $100 in the donation box for the kids' lights, that was Gordon Hale. He wasn't hallucinating a burnt-down theater. He was at my theater. He was at Everbridge. He was watching me. "It is poetic, really," Brittany laughed. "He wasted his fortune on art, and now his madness about art will help us secure the money to build the condos. And the best part? We transfer the trust assets into Cedarline Futures, that little LLC we set up in Delaware, and use it to underwrite the construction loans. By the time anyone looks at the books, the buildings will be up and sold." "And what about the Everbridge Center?" Cole asked. "Technically, the trust funds that place. If we drain the trust, the center defaults immediately." "That is the point, Cole," Trent said. "Everbridge is the appetizer. We kill the funding, the lease voids. We bulldoze it. 2 birds, 1 stone. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop the gasp that was clawing its way up my throat. They were not just destroying my theater. They were systematically dismantling a human being. They were going to stand in front of a judge and lie, claiming my grandfather was insane because he supported my work. They were using his love for the arts, the only connection we apparently shared, as the weapon to declare him incompetent. "What about Harper?" Cole asked. "She runs the place. She is going to scream bloody murder." "Harper," Brittany scoffed. "Please, Harper is a broke drama teacher with a credit score of 500. Who is going to listen to her? She is the poster child for failure. If she tries to make a scene, we just say the nut doesn't fall far from the tree. We paint her as emotional, unstable. Maybe we imply she has been taking advantage of the old man's confusion to get money for her little puppet shows." "Brittany is right," Vivian said, her voice cold and final. "Harper is not a threat. She is a nuisance. We offer her a job, or we offer her a settlement to go away. If she fights, we crush her. We have the resources. She has, what, a box of costumes." "So, the plan is set," Cole said. "Monday morning, we file the emergency motion, we present the medical report, we take custody of Gordon, we liquidate the trust, we break ground on Cedarline Lofts by January." "To family," Trent said. I heard the clink of crystal glasses. "To family," Vivian and Brittany echoed. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling so hard I could barely walk. I felt sick. I felt a rage so pure and white-hot that it threatened to burn a hole through my chest. They were monsters. They were wolves in silk and wool, drinking toast to the slaughter of their own kin. I stumbled back down the hallway, away from the ballroom, away from the noise. I leaned against the wall near the elevators, gasping for air. The man in the corner, Gordon Hale, my grandfather. He wasn't the villain of the family history. He wasn't the gambler who lost everything. He was the man who sat in the dark and watched me build something from nothing. He was the man who left money for light bulbs. And for 2 years, I had ignored him. I had let my family's lies blind me. I had let them paint him as a ghost when he was the only real person in the entire city. I looked back toward the ballroom doors. Through the crack, I could still see him sitting there at his lonely table. He was looking at the stage, where a jazz band was setting up. He looked patient. He looked like he was waiting for the curtain to rise. He knew. Suddenly, the memory of the other night came back to me. The way he had touched the back of the chair. The way he had inspected the rows. He wasn't just a fan. He was checking the structural integrity. He was checking the assets. Does he know what they are planning, or is he sitting there, waiting for the axe to fall, thinking he is all alone? I pushed myself off the wall. The fear was gone, burned away by the anger. I wasn't the coat check girl anymore. I wasn't the poor cousin. I wiped the tears from my eyes and straightened my cheap dress. I checked my reflection in the polished brass of the elevator doors. My face was pale, but my eyes were dangerous. "You want a show?" I whispered to the empty hallway. "I will give you a show." I turned and walked toward the ballroom, not to the coat check desk, not to the service entrance. I walked straight toward the main doors. I had a new blocking assignment. I needed to get to the corner table. I needed to talk to the man who had been watching me for 2 years. It was time for the actors to break the fourth wall. I ran. I did not wait for a coat check ticket or a polite exit. I ran out of the Skyline Crest Hotel like the building was on fire, my cheap heels clicking frantically against the marble and then the pavement. The cold December air hit my bare arms like a physical slap, but I welcomed it. It scrubbed the smell of expensive perfume and deceit off my skin. I ran past the valet stand, past the line of black limousines waiting for people like my aunt and cousins, and I did not stop until my lungs burned and the glittering lights of the hotel were just aglow in the distance behind me. I found myself navigating by instinct, my feet carrying me through the darker, quieter streets of Marigold City, toward the only place that had ever felt like solid ground, the Everbridge Community Arts Center. The theater was dark when I arrived, a hulking shadow against the snowy sky. It looked tired. The brickwork was crumbling, the marquee was missing half its bulbs, and the poster for winter on Cedar Street was flapping loose in the wind. But it was mine. It was the only thing in this city that was honest. I fumbled for my keys at the stage door in the back alley. My hands shaking so hard, I dropped them twice into the slush. That was when I saw him. He was standing under the small overhang of the rear loading dock, sheltered from the worst of the falling snow. The corner man. He was not just loitering, he was holding a push broom that we kept behind the dumpster. With slow, methodical strokes, he was sweeping the snow off the metal railing of the ramp, clearing the path. He moved with a familiarity that stopped me cold. He knew exactly where the ramp got slick. He knew exactly how to angle the broom to get the ice out of the grate. He looked like a man tending to his own garden. I froze, my hand still gripping the cold brass of the door handle. He must have heard my ragged breathing because he stopped sweeping. He did not turn around immediately. He leaned the broom against the brick wall, adjusted his fedora, and then slowly pivoted to face me. I pushed the door open and reached inside to flip the switch for the exterior work light. The floodlight buzzed to life, bathing the alley in a harsh, yellow glare. The light hit his face, illuminating the deep lines around his eyes and the silver stubble on his chin. It was the same lighting angle I had seen 100 times from the stage, the way the spotlight caught him in seat G14. He squinted against the brightness, but he did not look away. He looked at me, really looked at me with eyes that were clear, sharp, and startlingly blue. "You are out of breath," he said. His voice was gravelly, worn down by time, but steady. "You should not run in those shoes. Harper, you will twist an ankle, and then who will call the cues for the matinee?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Who are you?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. The truth was vibrating in the air between us. He smiled, a small, sad expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He took a step forward, leaning on his cane. "You look like your father when you are angry." He had that same way of setting his jaw, like he was ready to fight the tide. He paused, and then he said the two words that shattered the last of my defenses. "Little Starling." The air left my lungs. Starling. It was not just a nickname, it was a ghost. My father used to call me that because I was small and loud and always singing. He died when I was 7. No one had called me that in 23 years. Vivian certainly never used it. She barely used my first name without a sigh attached to it. Grandfather. The word felt foreign on my tongue, heavy and sharp. "We lost too many years just to get to the first question," he said softly. "But yes, I am Gordon Hale." "You—" I stepped back, my mind reeling. "They told me they said you were gone, mentally gone. They said you gambled everything away. They said you were a burden." "They said what they needed to say to feel comfortable with their own greed," Gordon said. He gestured to the door. "Can we go inside? My bones do not like this dampness as much as they used to." I unlocked the door and let him in. We walked onto the backstage area, the smell of sawdust and drying paint wrapping around us. I hit the switch for the ghost light, the single bulb on a stand in the center of the stage. It cast dramatic shadows across the empty floor. Gordon walked to the center of the stage. He looked up at the rigging, at the frayed ropes, and the patched velvet curtain. He nodded, as if approving of the work. I did not gamble it away. "Harper," he said, his back to me. "I sold the transport company 30 years ago. I saw what money did to people. I saw what it was doing to Vivian even then. She looked at a sunrise and calculated the zoning potential, so I took the cash and I put it away. I created the Hale Horizon Trust. I wanted to build things that lasted, art centers, scholarships for engineers, low-income housing that actually respected the people living in it." He turned to face me, leaning both hands on his cane. "But I had to know," he continued. "I had to know who would stay when the money was gone. So I played the part, the broken old man, the failure. I moved into a small apartment. I wore old clothes. I waited to see who would bring me a soup because I was hungry. not because they wanted to be in the will. Vivian, I said, the bitterness coating my tongue. Vivian and Trent. Gordon nodded. They checked on me, sure, but every visit was a transaction. They wanted power of attorney. They wanted to manage my paperwork. They wanted to know where the hidden accounts were. They looked at me and saw a bank vault they had lost the combination to. And me, I asked, my voice trembling. I never visited. I believed them. I thought you were ashamed of us. You wrote, he said. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a printout of an email. 3 years ago, you found my email address in some old family directory. You sent me this. He unfolded it. I recognized my own words. Dear grandfather, I hope you are warm today. We opened a show called The Glass Menagerie last night. A bulb blew in the third act. But the kids kept going. It was beautiful. I just wanted someone to know. You never asked for a dime, Gordon said, his voice thick with emotion. You sent me updates, ticket sales, the time the roof leaked. You told me about the plays. You were the only one who treated me like a human being, not an asset. So I started coming. I sat in the corner. I watched you build this place with nothing but sweat and stubbornness. I wanted to make sure you were real. I saw you, I said. Tonight, at the gala, you were sitting in the corner there, too. I like to see the whole room, he said. It is a habit. They are going to destroy you. Grandpa, I said, the urgency returning. I stepped closer to him, grabbing his sleeve. I heard them. I heard everything. Vivian, Trent, Brittany, and that lawyer, Cole Sanderson. They were in a meeting room. Gordon's expression did not change. He remained as still as a statue. Tell me. They are filing for full guardianship on Monday, I said, the words spilling out of me in a rush. They have a report from Dr. Laird saying you are senile. They are going to tell the judge you think you are in the Old Palace Theater, that you clap for empty stages. They are going to use your visits here, your support of me, as proof that you have lost your mind. I took a breath, watching his eyes. And once they have guardianship, they are going to liquidate the Hale Horizon Trust. They are moving the money into a shell company called Cedarline Futures. They are going to use your legacy to build those condos. And the first thing they are going to do is bulldoze Everbridge. They called it the appetizer. I expected him to be shocked. I expected him to be hurt. But Gordon Hale just straightened his spine. The frailty seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cold, hard anger that made him look 10 feet tall. They think I am reading the wrong script, he said softly. They think I am the confused old extra in the background. He looked at the empty auditorium, at the rows of seats where he had sat in silence for 2 years. Actually, he said, I am the director. He reached into his pocket again. This time, he pulled out a silver key on a plain ring. He held it out to me. What is this? I asked. The key to the lighting booth. He said. I frowned. Our lighting booth does not have a lock. Not this one, Gordon said. This is the key to Penthouse B at the Starlight Towers, the old brick building directly across the street from the Skyline Crest Hotel. It has the best view of the hotel ballroom in the city. I rented it 6 months ago under the name Mr. Arthur Miller. He pressed the key into my hand. His palm was warm and rough. You see the stage well. Harper, he said intently. You know how to frame a scene. You know how to use light to make people look at what you want them to see. But now you must learn to see the courtroom. You must learn to see the boardroom, not just the lights, but the shadows too. You need to see where the wires are hidden. I do not understand, I said, clutching the key. What are we going to do? We are going to give them exactly what they want, Gordon said. A dangerous smile touched his lips. They want a senile old man. I will give them King Lear. They want a confused victim. I will give them a tragedy. We are going to let them think they have won, right up until the moment the curtain falls. He tapped his cane on the stage floor, the sound echoing like a gavel. I have a lawyer. Her name is Dana Whitfield. She is not a family lawyer. She is a shark who eats family lawyers for breakfast. She has been preparing a draft for months to block any illegal transfer of the trust. But we needed proof of intent. We needed them to say it out loud. They did, I said. Tonight. But it was just words. It was behind a closed door. Then we need to get them to say it again, Gordon said. And we need to make sure the right audience is listening. I have some friends at the State Attorney General's office. They are very interested in financial fraud, especially when it involves charitable trusts. But they need a show. Harper, they need evidence. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the man who had built a railroad empire. He was brilliant, terrifying, and he was on my side. "Can you direct this, little starling?" he asked. "Can you direct a play where the actors do not know they are acting? Where the stage is a penthouse and a courtroom, and the script is their own lies?" I looked at the key in my hand. I thought about Brittany's laugh. I thought about Vivian's fake sympathy. I thought about the bulldozer waiting for my theater. I closed my fist around the key. It bit into my palm, sharp and real. "Yes," I said. "I can direct that." "Good," Gordon said. He buttoned his coat. "Go to the penthouse. Dana is waiting for you there. She has the files. I have to go back to the hotel before they realize the crazy old man has wandered off. I need to go be confused and helpless for a little while longer." He started to walk toward the stage door, then paused. He looked back at the ghost light, burning defiantly in the darkness. "Harper," he said, "make sure you get the lighting right. The villains always hate the light." "I will," I said. He tipped his fedora and slipped out into the snowy night, leaving me alone on the stage. But the theater did not feel empty anymore. It felt like a loaded weapon, and I finally had my finger on the trigger. I turned off the ghost light and ran for the door. It was time to go to the lighting booth. The Starlight Towers was not a tower in the modern sense. It was a 12-story brick fortress built in the 1920s, smelling of radiator heat and floor wax. It sat directly across the street from the Skyline Crest Hotel, a silent, sturdy ancestor staring down its glass and steel descendant. I took the elevator to the top floor, my hand clutching the silver key Gordon had given me, my heart still racing from the sprint through the snow. I expected a dusty apartment. I expected a sad, lonely room where an old man sat to watch the world go by without him. When I unlocked the door to Penthouse B and flipped the switch, I did not find a home. I found a war room. The space was open and industrial, with exposed brick walls and heavy wooden beams, but the decor was strictly tactical. Along the north wall, facing the large window that offered a direct line of sight into the hotel ballroom across the street, was a bank of monitors. Some were dark, but others showed live feeds the exterior of the Everbridge Center, the lobby of the Hale Horizon Trust Building, and a street view of Vivian's estate in Ridgeview. Tables were pushed together in the center of the room, covered in maps of Marigold City. Red marker lines traced the boundaries of the proposed Cedar Line Lofts project, cutting violently through the neighborhoods my grandfather had spent a lifetime trying to protect. Stacks of file boxes lined the walls, each labeled with dates and project names. "Close the door. Harper, you are letting the heat out." The voice did not belong to Gordon. I spun around, ready to fight, but stopped when I saw the woman standing by the kitchenette. She was an African-American woman in her early 40s, wearing a sharp charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored within an inch of its life. She held a steaming mug of coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other. Her eyes were assessing me, not with unkindness, but with a terrifying level of competence. "I am Dana Whitfield," she said, setting the mug down on a stack of legal pads. "I am your grandfather's personal counsel, and no, before you ask, Vivian does not know I exist. As far as your aunt is concerned, the family lawyer is Cole Sanderson, a man who thinks a loophole is something you tie your shoes with." "Gordon sent me," I said, still trying to process the room. "He gave me the key." "I know," Dana said. "He called me from a burner phone in the hotel bathroom 5 minutes ago." He is playing the part of the confused geriatric perfectly. He told the valet he was looking for his horse. It buys us time. She motioned for me to join her at the central table. We have a lot of work to do, and we have about 48 hours before they walk into court and try to erase him. I walked over to the table. It was covered in documents, trust deeds, bank statements, and a copy of the guardianship petition Vivian had filed. "How long has he been planning this?" I asked, running my hand over a blueprint of the Everbridge Theater. "Since the day Trent started bragging about the condo project at a country club lunch 3 months ago," Dana said. "Gordon is not deaf. Harper, he just knows when to stop talking. He knew they would come for the trust eventually. He just needed them to make the first move." She pulled a thick document from the pile. "This is the charter for the Hale Horizon Trust. Gordon wrote it 40 years ago. Most trusts are standard, but Gordon inserted a poison pill clause in Section 14. It states that in the event of an attempted hostile takeover, coerced guardianship, or proven malfeasance by any family member, the grantor, that is Gordon, reserves the right to designate a sole successor trustee, bypassing all biological hierarchy." "Meaning what?" I asked. "Meaning if we can prove they are acting in bad faith. He can cut them out completely," Dana said, her voice sharp. "He can hand the keys to the kingdom to anyone he wants, and he wants to hand them to you." I stared at her. "Me, I run a community theater. I do not know how to manage a multi-million-dollar trust." "Gordon does not need a banker," Dana said. "He needs a guardian. He needs someone who knows the value of the things he built. Not just the price of the land they sit on, but to trigger Section 14. We need proof. Irrefutable, hard evidence that their guardianship petition is a fraud designed to loot the assets." "I heard them," I said, the anger flaring up again. "I heard them planning it." "Hearsay," Dana dismissed. "In court, it is your word against 3 pillar-of-the-community types and their high-priced lawyer. We need them on tape. We need them explaining the crime in their own voices." "I can help with that." I pulled out my phone and dialed the one number I knew would answer at midnight on a Saturday. Noah Pierce. Noah and I had gone to college together. He was a sound engineering genius who had turned down tour jobs with major rock bands to run an investigative podcast about urban corruption. He lived for this kind of fight. "Harper," he answered on the first ring. "Why are you calling me? Did the dimmer board catch fire again?" "I need you to bring your kit," I said. "The big kit, and I need you to meet me at the Starlight Towers in 20 minutes. We are going to wire a stage." "What kind of stage?" "The kind where if we miss a cue, I lose everything," I said. Noah arrived in 15 minutes, looking like a disheveled wizard with a mess of curly hair and a backpack full of cables. When he saw the command center, he let out a low whistle. He and Dana exchanged brief introductions, and then he went to work. "Okay," Noah said, unpacking a series of small black devices. "Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state for wiretapping, generally speaking, meaning you cannot just record people without them knowing. Unless," Dana interjected, "there is a reasonable expectation that a crime is being committed, and we have authorization from a law enforcement entity, or if one of the parties in the conversation consents to the recording. Gordon consents. He is the target. If he is wearing the wire, and he agrees to it, we are on much firmer ground." "Exactly," Noah said. He held up a tiny object that looked like a hearing aid. "This is a unidirectional microphone disguised as a standard hearing assistance device, high fidelity, noise canceling. If Gordon wears this, we hear everything he hears, and this," he held up a flat black disc the size of a coaster, "is a pressure zone microphone. We can stick it under a table, behind a curtain. It picks up ambient conversation in a whole room." The door to the penthouse opened again. This time, it was Gordon. He looked exhausted. The walk from the hotel must have taken everything he had, but his eyes were alive. He closed the door and locked it, then leaned heavily against the frame. "They think I am in bed," he wheezed slightly, a smile playing on his lips. "I told the maid I had a contagious stomach flu and gave her $50 to leave me alone until morning." "Grandpa," I said, rushing to pull out a chair for him. I am fine, little starling, he said, waving me off, but sinking into the chair gratefully. Just a little stage fright. It has been a long time since I had to perform. We were just discussing the audio, Noah said, treating Gordon with an immediate, easy respect. Mr. Hale, if you wear this device, we can get crystal clear audio of every conversation you have with them. I will wear it, Gordon said. But we need more than just my conversations. We need to catch them when they think I am not listening. That is when they tell the truth. He turned to the small safe built into the wall behind the desk. His hands shook slightly as he dialed in the combination left to 20, right to 10, left to 5. The heavy steel door clicked open. He pulled out a stack of papers and slid them across the table to me. Look at this, he said. I picked up the top sheet. It was a bank alert from the Private Wealth Division of Marigold State Bank. Unauthorized access attempt, account ending in 4559, initiated by digital signature Salvi, Caro power of attorney pending. They tried to move $500,000 yesterday, Gordon said quietly. Vivian tried to use a digital copy of my signature to transfer seed money to Cedarline Futures. The bank's algorithm flagged it because the signature was a pixel-perfect match to my driver's license from 10 years ago. No human signs their name exactly the same way twice. It was a forgery. This is a felony, Dana said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Attempted wire fraud. But they do not know they were caught, Gordon said. The bank froze the transaction and called me directly on my private line, the one Vivian does not know about. I told the bank manager to hold the freeze, but not to notify the initiator yet. I told him it was a technical glitch I would sort out. So they think the money is just stuck in the pipes. I realized they are desperate. That is why they are rushing the hearing on Monday. They need the legal authority to unfreeze that money before the construction deadlines hit. Exactly, Gordon said. They are walking on a tightrope, and they do not know I have cut the safety net. I looked at the papers, then at the map of the theater, then at the monitors. My mind shifted gears. I stopped thinking like a victim and started thinking like a director. I looked at the layout of the Everbridge Center. We need a rehearsal, I said. I grabbed a red marker and walked to the whiteboard where a schematic of the theater was taped up. If we want to catch them, we cannot just wait for them to slip up. We have to create the scene where they feel comfortable enough to brag. I drew a circle around the balcony of the theater. The balcony, I said. The acoustics up there are perfect. It is isolated. It feels private. Vivian and Trent love to feel like they are looking down on people. If I can get them up there. Noah, can we rig the balcony? Easy, Noah said. I can plant mics in the railing planters. We can put a camera in the lighting rig pointing straight down. And the hearing, Dana added. The courtroom is a stage too. We need to choreograph exactly where Gordon sits, where the lawyer stands. We need to control the sight lines. I started drawing a timeline on the board. Act 1, the setup. I wrote, we maintain the illusion. I play the submissive, scared niece. Gordon plays the confused old man. We let them think they are winning. Act 2. The trap, I continued. We lure them to the theater tomorrow night. I will tell them I have a buyer for the scrap metal or something. No, I will tell them a documentary crew wants to film the historic final days of the theater. They cannot resist publicity. Act 3, the reveal, Gordon finished, his eyes gleaming. Monday morning, the courtroom. We spent the next 3 hours planning every beat. We scripted the conversations. I told Gordon exactly which phrases to use to trigger Vivian's temper. I told him how to stand so he looked frailer than he was. I showed him how to miss his mark when sitting down. To sell the disorientation. Blocking. It was all blocking. At 4 a.m, a chime sounded from Dana's laptop. She stopped pacing and rushed to the screen. This is it, she said. The Attorney General's office. We all gathered around the screen. The email was from the Assistant Deputy Attorney General, a man named Marcus Thorne, Ms. Whitfield. We have reviewed the preliminary digital evidence regarding the bank transfer attempt and the affidavit provided by Mr. Hale. The implications of predatory guardianship and charity fraud are significant. We cannot intervene in a civil family matter without probable cause of a crime. However, given the flag transaction, we are authorizing a preliminary observation. 2 investigators from the Financial Crimes Division will be present in the gallery at the hearing on Monday. If you can produce corroborating audio or testimonial evidence of intent to defraud during the proceeding, they are authorized to act. Do not waste our time. Dana. Dana let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. We have them, she whispered. We have the audience. 2 investigators, Gordon said, nodding slowly. Critics. I always hated critics, but I think I might like these 2. It puts the stakes through the roof, I said, feeling the weight of it. If we mess this up, if the audio fails, or if they do not say the right things, the investigators walk away, and Vivian wins. We only get 1 take. Gordon reached out and covered my hand with his. Then we better make sure the lighting is perfect. I looked at the man who had been a silent shadow in my life for so many years, and then at the team we had assembled in this cold brick room. We were a ragtag cast: a drama teacher, a retired tycoon, a renegade lawyer, and a podcaster. Noah, I said, get the gear. We have a theater to rig. On it, Noah said, zipping up his backpack. Gordon, I said, go back to the hotel. Remember, shuffle your feet. Look confused. I will ask the doorman what year it is, Gordon said with a wink. Dana, I said, draft the petition for the successor trustee. Make sure the ink is dry by Monday. Already done, she said. I looked out the window at the Skyline Crest Hotel. Somewhere in that tower, Vivian and Trent were sleeping in 400 thread-count sheets, dreaming of bulldozers and bank accounts. They thought the show was over. They thought the theater was dark. They had no idea we were just setting the stage for the performance of a lifetime. Sunday evening arrived with the heavy, suffocating silence of a storm holding its breath. My Aunt Vivian's house in Ridgeview Estates was not really a home. It was a mausoleum built of beige stucco and imported marble, sitting on 3 acres of manicured lawn where even the grass seemed afraid to grow out of line. I drove my battered Honda up the winding driveway, passing the wrought iron gates that were worth more than my entire college education. I had been summoned for a cozy family dinner, that was Vivian's term, in the Caro lexicon. Cozy meant a strategic ambush with expensive catering. I parked between Trent's gleaming black SUV and Brittany's convertible, taking a moment to check my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, which was good. It was part of the costume. I needed to look like the frazzled, broke art teacher who was out of her depth. I needed to look like I was losing. I stepped out into the cold air. Somewhere down the street, parked in an unmarked utility van that blended perfectly with the suburban landscape, was Noah Pierce. He was wearing headphones and watching audio waveforms dance on a laptop screen. I took a deep breath, put on my mask of nervous obedience, and rang the doorbell. The door was opened by a housekeeper I did not recognize, who ushered me into the grand foyer. The air inside smelled of lilies and furniture polish. It was cold, despite the thermostat probably being set to 72 degrees. We are in the drawing room. Harper. Vivian's voice floated down the hallway. I walked in. The scene was set with the precision of a master playwright. The drawing room was vast, dominated by a fireplace big enough to roast a whole pig. Vivian, Trent, and Brittany were arranged on the cream-colored sofas like models in a catalog for sociopaths. Sitting in a leather armchair near the fire was a man I recognized, Dr. Laird, the family physician who had been signing prescriptions for Vivian since I was a child. And then there was Gordon. They had put him in the corner, again. He was seated in a high-backed wing chair that looked like it had been dragged down from the attic. It was positioned slightly away from the main circle of conversation, facing a small television set on a rolling cart. The volume was turned down low, playing an old black-and-white movie. He looked small. They had dressed him in a cardigan that was slightly too big, making his shoulders look narrow. He was staring at the screen, his mouth slightly open, his hands resting on the arms of the chair. He looked exactly like the senile, helpless invalid they claimed he was. "Harper, darling," Vivian said, standing up and gliding over to offer me an air kiss that did not touch my skin. "Thank you for coming. I know how busy you are with your little plays." "Hi, Aunt Vivian," I said, keeping my voice small. "Hello, everyone." "Grab a drink." "Harper," Trent said without looking up from his phone. "We have the good stuff out. Might as well enjoy it before the austerity measures kick in." "Austerity measures?" I asked, feigning confusion. "We are joking, dear," Vivian said sharply. She guided me toward the sofa. "Sit. We need to have a serious conversation. Dr. Laird is here to help us understand the gravity of the situation." I sat on the edge of the sofa, keeping my knees together and my hands folded in my lap. I glanced over at Gordon. He did not look at me. He continued to stare at the television, but I saw his left hand moving on the armrest. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. He was wearing a chunky digital watch on his wrist, a gift I had given him yesterday, which actually contained a high-sensitivity microphone linked to Noah's receiver. He was tapping the casing rhythmically, creating a clean audio spike for Noah to calibrate the levels. He was checking the sound. "Harper," Dr. Laird began, his voice dripping with practiced professional concern. "I was just explaining to your aunt and cousins that Gordon's decline has been rapid, and frankly, heartbreaking. He does not know where he is half the time," Brittany added, swirling her wine. "Yesterday, I found him in the pantry talking to a box of cereal. He thought it was his old dispatcher. It is called temporal displacement." Dr. Laird nodded sagely. "He is living in the past. Specifically, he seems fixated on the idea of a theater. He believes he is inspecting properties he owned 30 years ago. It is a common symptom of advanced dementia. The brain retreats to a time of perceived power to escape the confusion of the present." Vivian leaned forward, her eyes wet with tears that appeared on command. "It is so hard to watch. Harper, he thinks you are your mother. He asks why you are playing with dolls. And the other night, at the gala, he told the valet he was waiting for a carriage, a horse-drawn carriage." I bit the inside of my lip to keep from screaming. It was a lie, all of it, but it was a well-constructed lie. "That sounds awful," I whispered. "It is dangerous," Trent said. "He has control over significant assets. Harper, the Hale Horizon Trust, $50 million in liquid capital and real estate. If he decides to invest that money in one of his delusions like buying a fleet of steam trains or pouring cash into a condemned building, it is gone. Poof. That is why we filed the petition," Vivian said softly. "For his own good. We need to protect him from himself, and we need you to help us." She reached across the coffee table and slid a thick folder toward me. On top was a single sheet of paper and affidavit. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a statement of support." Cole Sanderson's name wasn't on it, but his legal syntax was all over the paragraphs. "It simply says that you have observed the same behavior we have, that he is confused, that he talks to empty chairs, that he refers to the Everbridge Center as the Palace Theater. It confirms Dr. Laird's diagnosis." I looked at the paper. It was a death warrant for Gordon's freedom. "And if I do not sign it?" I asked, looking up at Vivian. The mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second. Her eyes hardened into flint. "Harper," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "if you do not sign it, the court might wonder why. They might wonder if you are taking advantage of him. Brittany tells me he has been giving you cash donations, hundreds of dollars, without a receipt." "He put money in the donation box," I defended weakly. "Or," Brittany interjected, "you manipulated a confused old man into funding your failing hobby. That is elder abuse. Sweetie, if we have to go to court without your signature, our lawyer is going to paint a very ugly picture of you. He will say you are emotionally unstable, that you are using his dementia to relive your childhood fantasies." "We do not want to do that," Trent said, smiling like a shark. "We want to be a family. We want to take care of him, and we want to take care of you." There is a job waiting for you at the new building. A real job. I looked over at Gordon again. He had turned his head slightly. He was looking out the window at the dark lawn, muttering to himself. I stood up and walked over to him. Vivian tensed but didn't stop me. "Grandfather," I said softly. Gordon looked up. His eyes were cloudy, unfocused. He looked through me, not at me. "The lantern is too low." "Starling," he mumbled, his voice raspy. "The fairies cannot fly if the lantern is too low. You have to fix the rigging." My heart stopped. It sounded like nonsense. To Vivian and Trent? It was the rambling of a madman, but I knew exactly what it was. When I was 14, in my very first high school production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. I had been the assistant stage manager. The main fairy light had jammed during dress rehearsal. My father had been dead for 7 years by then. But I remembered crying backstage because I couldn't fix it. Gordon hadn't been there. Or so I thought. But he knew. He knew the specific crisis of my 14th year. He must have been there, watching from the shadows even then. "The rigging is fine, Grandfather," I said, my voice trembling with real emotion now. "We fixed it." He blinked, and for 1 microsecond, the cloudiness vanished. He winked, a sharp, deliberate wink. Then he went back to staring at the television. "The train is late," he muttered. "Tell the conductor the train is late." I turned back to the family. They were watching me with predatory anticipation. He is really confused," I said, injecting a tremor into my voice. "See?" Vivian sighed, relieved. "We told you. Now, sign the paper. Harper, let us get him the help he needs." I need a minute," I said. "I feel a little sick. Can I use the powder room?" "Of course," Vivian said. "Take your time, but do not take too long. We have dessert coming." I walked out of the drawing room, clutching my purse. I went into the hallway bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet to mask any sound, then leaned against the sink, staring at my pale reflection. I did not sign the paper, but I didn't leave. I needed more. We needed the specific admission. We needed the why. I took a deep breath, splashed cold water on my face, and went back out. I did not go back to the drawing room immediately. I lingered in the hallway, just out of sight, listening. "She will sign." Trent's voice drifted out. He sounded triumphant. "She is weak. She is scared of being cut off." "She should be," Brittany laughed. "God, I cannot wait to get that smell out of my clothes. That theater smells like mold and desperate children. I'm going to enjoy watching the wrecking ball hit that place." "Is the contract ready?" Vivian asked. "Done," Trent replied. I heard the sound of ice rattling in a glass. "I have the deposit documents for the Cedar Line lofts right here. The demolition crew is on standby for Tuesday morning. The second the judge bangs that gavel and signs the guardianship order, I sign the demolition permit." There it was. "Are you sure it is that fast?" Dr. Laird asked. "Usually these things take time." "Not when you own the land and the lease is voided," Trent said. His voice was loud, arrogant. "We transfer the trust funds to Cedar Line Futures at 9 a.m. We verify the funds by 10. We sign the demo order by noon. 2 signatures. Doctor, that is all it is. 2 signatures, and that whole rotting neighborhood turns into $50 million of luxury real estate." "And the old man?" Dr. Laird asked. "He goes to the Sunrise facility in Vermont," Vivian said coldly. "It is very private, very secure. He will never have to worry about confused wanderings again. He will be safe and out of the way." "And Everbridge?" Brittany asked. "I promised my trainer we would have the gym layout finalized by next month. I want a 2-story fitness center with a view of the skyline. No more sweaty little kids acting out plays. Just clean, profitable space." "You will get your gym, sweetheart," Trent promised. "Everbridge is the first thing to go. It is the cornerstone of the new foundation. Literally." I pressed my back against the hallway wall, my heart hammering so hard I thought they must be able to hear it. They had said it all: the conspiracy, the timeline, the premeditated destruction of the trust, the admission that the guardianship was a tool for real estate development, not medical care, and Gordon was sitting 5 feet away from them, recording every single word. I waited for a pause in the laughter, then walked back into the room. I looked like a ghost. "Harper," Vivian asked, "are you all right?" I am really not feeling well," I said, clutching my stomach. "I think I ate something bad at lunch. I need to go home. I cannot focus on the paperwork right now." Vivian looked annoyed, but she didn't want a scene. "Fine, take the affidavit with you. Bring it to court tomorrow morning. Signed, do not make me chase you, Harper." "I won't," I said. "I will see you in court, Aunt Vivian." I walked over to Gordon one last time. He was still staring at the TV. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Good night, Grandfather," I whispered. He did not look up, but he tapped the arm of the chair twice. 2 sharp taps. Received. Go. I walked out of the house, past the chandeliers and the lies. I got into my car, my hands shaking as I put the key in the ignition. I drove down the long driveway, past the gates, and turned onto the main road. I pulled over a mile down the road, where the darkness of the woods swallowed the streetlights. I grabbed my phone. My fingers flew across the screen. I typed the message to Dana Whitfield. "The script is exactly what we thought. We have the confession. We have the motive. We are ready for opening night." I hit send. Then I looked at the rearview mirror again. The tired, scared art teacher was gone. In her place was a director who had just called places for the final act. I put the car in drive and headed for the city. Tomorrow, the curtain would rise, and the Caro family was going to find out that they weren't the audience. They were the tragedy. The bait was not money, it was vanity. If you want to catch a wolf, you use meat. If you want to catch a narcissist, you use a mirror. In this case, the mirror was a lie about a documentary crew from a major streaming platform looking for a human interest story about the legacy of the Hale family and the transition of the historic theater district. I sent the email to Brittany on Monday morning, attaching a fake production schedule that Noah had mocked up in 10 minutes, using a template he found online. I told her the producers wanted to capture some B-roll footage of the family watching a rehearsal to show their deep connection to the community before the new development broke ground. They arrived at Everbridge at 7 o'clock sharp. The theater was set exactly the way I wanted it. On the stage, 20 children were rehearsing the finale of Winter on Cedar Street. I had picked the most innocent, joyous number in the show, a song about snowmen coming to life. The music was upbeat, the kids were laughing, and the lighting was warm and amber. I kept the parents and the children down on the deck, strictly instructed to stay in the light. I told them the producers were setting up lighting checks in the balcony and that the dark areas were off-limits for safety. Up above, in the shadows of the mezzanine, Noah Pierce was running a different kind of show. He had wired the balcony like a recording studio. There were ambient microphones taped to the underside of the railing, hidden by fake garlands of ivy. There was a high-definition camera wedged between the spotlight riggings, pointing directly down at the private box seats. And then there was the special setup in the back corner. Gordon was already there. He sat in seat G14, melting into the darkness. He wore his old coat and his fedora pulled low, under the brim. His eyes were sharp behind his glasses. We had taped a high-gain microphone to the underside of the armrest of his chair, and another one inside the breast pocket of his coat. He was a human listening post. "Oh, look at this place," Brittany said as she walked into the lobby, her heels clicking loudly on the worn tile. She was dressed for the camera in a shocking pink blazer that made her look like a highlighter pen. "It really does have that gritty, before-picture vibe, does it not? It is authentic," I said, forcing a smile. "That is what the producers like." "Come on upstairs. The lighting is better in the balcony, and we can talk without disturbing the kids." Vivian and Trent followed, looking around with a mix of boredom and appraisal. Trent was tapping on the walls, probably checking for structural rot, while Vivian adjusted her pearl necklace. "Where is the crew?" Vivian asked, looking around the empty balcony as I led them to the front row of seats, directly under the hidden camera. They are setting up the interview room in the office, I lied smoothly. They want to get some candid shots of you watching the rehearsal first. Just act natural. Talk amongst yourselves about the future. They want to capture the emotional weight of the transition. Emotional weight. Trent snorted. I like that. Sounds expensive. They sat down. Vivian took the center seat, the queen holding court. Brittany sat to her left, immediately pulling out her phone. Trent sat to her right, leaning his elbows on the velvet railing, looking down at the children singing on stage. Gordon sat 10 feet behind them, in the corner. They barely glanced at him. To them, he was just a prop, a piece of scenery that had been moved from the house to the theater. Is he going to be in the shot? Brittany whispered loudly, gesturing with her thumb over her shoulder at Gordon. The producers think it adds poignancy, I said. The patriarch watching the final curtain. Just ignore him. He thinks he is watching a vaudeville show from 1950. Perfect, Vivian said. Tragic but dignified. I can work with that. I stepped back, leaning against the wall near the exit door. I was out of the camera frame, but I had a clear view of them. I tapped my earlobe, a signal to Noah in the tech booth. Rolling, on stage, the music swelled, the kids spun in circles, throwing fake snow into the air. It was a beautiful, pure moment of theater. Up in the balcony, the sharks began to feed. It really is a prime footprint, Trent said, looking down at the stage not as a performance space but as a square footage calculation. Once we knock down these load-bearing walls, the atrium for the condos will have a 30-foot ceiling. We can probably fit a fountain in the lobby. Make sure you mention that on camera, Brittany said, holding her phone up to record a selfie video with the stage in the background. Hey guys, we are here saying a bittersweet goodbye to the old Everbridge Center. It is so sad to see it go. But we are so excited for the future. Cedarline Lofts is going to bring so much life to this dead neighborhood. #progress. #Hail Legacy. She posted the story and then lowered the phone, her smile vanishing instantly. God, this place is drafty. How long do we have to sit here? Just until the crew comes out, I said from the shadows. Speaking of the future, I was looking at the blueprints you sent over. I noticed there is no space allocated for a community room. I was hoping we could keep a small studio for the children's classes, even just a basement room. Vivian turned in her seat to look at me. Her face was illuminated by the spill of the stage lights below, casting deep shadows in her hollow cheeks. Harper, darling, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. We have talked about this. The Cedarline Lofts is a luxury brand. We cannot have this sort of thing in the lobby. It brings down the property value, noise, mess, people who cannot afford the HOA fees loitering around. But the trust charter specifically mentions supporting arts for the underprivileged, I pressed, pushing her toward the trap. The trust is evolving, Vivian said. Just like the neighborhood, you need to think bigger. Harper, once we have the assets, you can start your own private practice. You could teach yoga to the residents. Or elocution lessons for their children. That is where the real money is. Your art will have a much better audience when they are paying proper tuition. I felt a cold knot of anger in my stomach, but I kept my face neutral. Teach yoga to the rich. That was her vision. Strip mining the culture of the city to serve the people who were pricing everyone else out. It just seems like we are rushing, I said. Moving the trust assets so quickly. Are you sure it is legal to transfer everything to the LLC before the guardianship is final? It is not rushing. It is strategy, Trent snapped. He sounded irritated, which was good. Irritated men make mistakes. The construction loans require liquidity proof by Wednesday. The hearing is tomorrow morning. The timing is tight, but it is managed. But the bank, I said, playing the naive worrier. I heard Gordon say something about the bank freezing an account. Is that going to be a problem? Trent stiffened. He turned to look at Vivian, then back at me. Who told you that? He demanded. Gordon mumbled it. I lied. He said the bank man was angry about a signature. Trent laughed, a harsh barking sound. The old man does not know what day of the week it is. The bank is just being bureaucratic. Their fraud detection algorithms are too sensitive. So you did try to move the money? I asked innocently. We did a test transfer, Trent said, his voice rising slightly. Just to ensure the routing numbers for Cedarline futures were active. Cole advised it. But, I paused, letting the silence hang for a second. How could you do a transfer grandfather has not signed over power of attorney yet? You need his signature. Vivian shot Trent a warning look, but Trent was too deep in his own arrogance. He wanted to prove he was the smartest man in the room. He wanted to show the broke drama teacher how real business was done. Digital signatures. Harper, Trent said, waving his hand dismissively. It is the 21st century. I have a stylus pad that captures biometric pressure. I borrowed a signature from an old deed Gordon signed 10 years ago. I just overlaid it. It is a standard efficiency measure. We are going to have the legal authority in 24 hours anyway. I just accelerated the process to make sure we hit the funding deadline. 2 signatures. Remember, 1 on the screen, 1 on the demolition order. It is practically administrative. My heart stopped. Then it started beating double time. He had just admitted to forgery. He had admitted to using a stolen biometric signature to access a protected trust account before having legal guardianship. He had called it an efficiency measure, and he had set it into a high-definition microphone. I glanced at the corner. Gordon hadn't moved. He was still staring straight ahead, his hands folded on his cane. But the light from the green exit sign above the door was reflecting off the rim of his glasses. It made him look like a sentinel, a silent guardian in the dark. That sounds risky, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It is only risky if you lose, Brittany said, checking her makeup in her phone camera. And we never lose. By tomorrow afternoon, Grandpa will be safely tucked away in Vermont. The trust will be ours, and this ugly building will be a pile of bricks. And you, Harper, can finally get a real job. Vermont, I asked. I thought you said the facility was local. Vermont is better, Vivian said. Less chance of interruptions, no old friends dropping by to confuse him. Total isolation is best for his condition. Dr. Laird agrees. Isolation, imprisonment. They were planning to bury him alive. Well, I said, pushing off the wall. I think the producers have everything they need. What? Vivian frowned. But they haven't even interviewed us yet. They are listening, I said. What do you mean? Trent asked, standing up. I mean the acoustics in here are excellent, I said. You do not need to be in the room to hear the performance. At that moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Noah. Package secure. Audio is crystal clear. Encryption complete. Sent to Dana and the AG investigators. We are done. I looked down at the stage. The song had ended. The children were taking their bows to an empty auditorium. The parents were clapping from the wings. The interview is canceled, I said, my voice steady and cold. The producers decided they wanted a different angle, something about crime drama. Is this a joke? Vivian stood up, her silver bracelets jangling. You dragged us out here for a joke. This is exactly why you are a failure. Harper, you have no respect for people's time. I have a lot of respect for time, I said, especially prison time. What did you say? Trent took a step toward me, his face flushing red. Before he could move another inch, the house lights, the big, harsh work lights that we used for cleaning, slammed on with a deafening thunk. The sudden brightness was blinding. It washed out the soft theatrical mood and exposed the dust, the peeling paint, and the terrified expressions on their faces. And it exposed Gordon. He wasn't slumped over anymore. He wasn't staring at the floor. He was standing up. He stood tall, his spine straight, his chin lifted. He held his cane not for support, but like a scepter. He looked at the 3 of them, his daughter, his granddaughter, the man who had forged his name with a look of absolute, crushing disappointment. The lighting in here is unforgiving, Gordon said. His voice was not the raspy mumble he had used at the house. It was deep, resonant. The the voice of a man who had commanded rail yards and boardrooms. "It shows every crack." Vivian froze. She looked at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Daddy, what are you?" "Sit down. You are confused." "I am not confused. Vivian," Gordon said, taking a slow step toward them. "I know exactly what day it is. It is Sunday. I know exactly where I am. I am in the Everbridge Theater, the building I bought 30 years ago to save it from the wrecking ball. And I know exactly who you are." He looked at Trent. "You used the deed from the 1998 land acquisition for the signature overlay. I recognize the pressure point on the H. You always were lazy with your research." Trent turned pale, his eyes darting around the balcony. He is lucid. This is a momentary of clarity. It happens." "It is not a moment," I said, stepping up beside Gordon. "It is the whole play, and we just recorded the climax." I pointed to the ivy on the railing. I pointed to the camera in the rigging. "You are live," I said. "Or at least, you were. The file is already with the Attorney General." "You recorded us!" Brittany shrieked. "That is illegal. You cannot do that." "We can if one party consents," Gordon said calmly. He tapped the microphone on his chair. And I consented. I wanted to hear my family's plans for my retirement. I must say, Vermont sounds cold. Vivian looked at the camera, then at me, then at Gordon. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The trap had snapped shut. "You set us up," she hissed. "You ungrateful little—" "Get out," Gordon said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The authority in his voice was absolute. "Get out of my theater. Go home. Put on your best suits. You have a court hearing in the morning, and I promise you, the audience there will be very interested in what you just said." Trent looked like he was going to be sick. Brittany was frantically deleting her Instagram story, as if that would delete the crime. Vivian stared at Gordon with pure hatred, realizing for the first time that the useless old man had just outplayed her entire life's work. They fled. They scrambled down the stairs, their footsteps chaotic and loud, leaving the balcony to us. Below, the kids had finished their bows and were running off stage to get their coats. They had no idea that above their heads, a dynasty had just crumbled. Gordon turned to me. The anger faded from his eyes, replaced by a soft warmth. He looked at the empty stage, then at the spot where his family had just stood. "Well," he said, adjusting his hat, "that was a difficult scene, but I think we nailed the ending." "We did," I said, my hand trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. "Now comes the hard part," Gordon said. "Tomorrow, we have to take a bow." He offered me his arm. "Walk me out, Director. I believe our ride is waiting." I took his arm. We walked out of the balcony, leaving the ghost light burning behind us, two conspirators stepping out of the dark and into the waiting fire. Monday morning at the Marigold County Courthouse felt less like the start of a legal proceeding and more like the opening scene of a funeral. The air in the small, wood-paneled hearing room was thick with the smell of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a space designed to intimidate, with high ceilings and a judge's bench that loomed over us like a pulpit. On the left side of the aisle sat the Caro dynasty. Vivian was dressed in a modest navy suit that whispered, "concerned daughter," rather than real estate mogul. Brittany wore black and kept her head bowed, checking her phone in her lap only when she thought no one was looking. Trent sat on the edge of his seat, his leg bouncing nervously, his eyes darting toward the door every time it opened. Their lawyer, Cole Sanderson, was arranging his papers with the precision of a surgeon preparing to amputate a limb. On the right side, we were a motley crew. I sat next to Gordon. He was playing his part to perfection. He slumped slightly in his chair, gripping his cane with both hands, his fedora resting on his knees. He looked frail. He looked like a man who was not quite sure why he was there. Behind us sat Dana Whitfield, looking calm and terrifyingly competent, and two men in gray suits who I knew were forensic accountants from the Attorney General's office. They did not look like family friends. They looked like sharks waiting for a drop of blood. The Honorable Judge Evelyn Vance entered the room. She was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a gaze that could cut glass. We all rose. "Be seated," she said, adjusting her glasses. "We are here to hear the emergency petition for full guardianship of Mr. Gordon Hale, filed by Mrs. Vivian Caro. Mr. Sanderson, you may proceed." Cole Sanderson buttoned his jacket and walked to the center of the room. He had a voice like oiled mahogany, smooth and rich, and utterly fake. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a tragedy. There is no other word for it. We are here today not to take rights away from a man, but to protect a father, a grandfather, a pillar of this community who has, sadly, lost his way in the fog of dementia." He picked up a document from his table. "I have here a sworn report from Dr. Alastair Laird, the family physician for over 20 years. It details a rapid and heartbreaking cognitive decline. Mr. Hale suffers from temporal displacement. He wanders the streets at night. He holds conversations with people who have been dead for decades. He is a danger to himself and, critically, a danger to the substantial estate he controls in a state that supports hundreds of jobs in this city." Cole paused for effect, looking sadly at Gordon. Gordon stared blankly at the water pitcher on the table. "We are asking the court to grant Mrs. Caro guardianship so she can ensure he receives the round-the-clock care he needs at a specialized facility, and to safeguard the Hale Horizon Trust from being dissipated by confused, impulsive decisions." "Mrs. Caro," Judge Vance said, "do you wish to speak?" Vivian stood up. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. It was a masterclass in acting. "I just want my father to be safe, Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling. "It breaks my heart to see him like this. He goes to that old theater, the Everbridge Center. He sits in the back in the dark and claps for plays that are not happening. He thinks he is back in 1985. He thinks he is inspecting the property for purchase. I have tried to care for him at home, but he gets aggressive. He insists on giving away money to strangers. I am terrified he's going to walk into traffic or sign away his life savings to a scam artist." Judge Vance nodded sympathetically. "Thank you, Mrs. Caro." Cole smiled. He thought he had won. He turned his gaze to me. "Your Honor, we also have Mr. Hale's granddaughter, Ms. Harper Alexander, present. She manages the theater where Mr. Hale has been, wandering. I believe she can confirm the extent of his confusion." Cole gestured for me to stand. He expected the cowed, broke art teacher who needed a job. He expected the affidavit he had tried to force me to sign. I stood up. My legs felt steady. I looked at Vivian, then at Trent, then at the judge. "Ms. Alexander," Judge Vance said, "can you speak to your grandfather's condition? Does he appear confused when he visits your theater?" "No, Your Honor," I said clearly. "He does not." The silence in the room was instant. Cole's smile froze. Vivian's head snapped up. "He comes to every show," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "He sits in seat G14. He does not clap for ghosts, Your Honor. He claps for the children. He remembers every single production. Last week, he critiqued the lighting cue in the second act of Winter on Cedar Street. He told me the blue gel was too cold for the scene. He was right. A man who thinks he is in 1985 would not know that we switched to LED rigs 2 years ago. He notices everything." "Objection," Cole barked, stepping forward. "The witness is not a medical professional. She is an emotionally compromised relative who relies on the ward's financial handouts to keep her failing business afloat. Her testimony is biased." "I am not biased," I said, turning to face Cole. "I am observant, and I am not the one trying to bulldoze a community center to build condos." "Your Honor," Cole shouted, "this is irrelevant." "It is highly relevant," Dana Whitfield said, standing up. Her voice cut through Cole's bluster like a knife. "Your Honor, I am Dana Whitfield, representing Mr. Gordon Hale. The petitioner claims Mr. Hale is incompetent. We have evidence that suggests this petition is not motivated by medical concern, but by a premeditated conspiracy to defraud the Hale Horizon Trust. Fraud. Judge Vance lowered her glasses. That is a serious accusation, Counselor. We have proof, Dana said. Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state for recording conversations. However, exceptions exist when one party consents, or when there is no expectation of privacy in the commission of a crime. We have a recording, made with Mr. Hale's express consent and cooperation, of a dinner that took place 2 nights ago at the Caro residence. This is an ambush, Cole protested. I have not seen this evidence. I have the file right here, Dana said, handing a USB drive to the bailiff. And I believe the content speaks to the urgency of the matter. Judge Vance looked at Cole, then at Dana. Play it. Noah, who had been sitting quietly in the back, stepped forward and plugged the drive into the court's AV system. A moment later, the speakers crackled to life. The sound of silverware on china filled the room. Then, Vivian's voice, clear as a bell. It is called temporal displacement. He is living in the past. We are building the narrative that he is stuck in a loop. Then Trent's voice. The demolition crew is on standby for Tuesday morning. The second the judge bangs that gavel and signs the guardianship order, I sign the demolition permit, and then the kicker. 2 signatures, Doctor, that is all it is. 2 signatures, and that whole rotting neighborhood turns into $50 million of luxury real estate. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Vivian's face had drained of all color. She looked like a statue made of ash. Trent was gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. That recording is illegal, Cole screamed, losing his smooth composure entirely. That was a private residence. My clients had a reasonable expectation of privacy. I moved to strike this immediately. Your Honor, a deep voice spoke from the back of the room. One of the gray-suited men stood up. He walked to the bar, flashing a badge. Special Agent Miller, State Attorney General's Office, Financial Crimes Division. We authorize the surveillance based on probable cause regarding wire fraud and identity theft. Identity theft? Judge Vance asked, her eyebrows raising toward her hairline. Yes, Your Honor, Agent Miller said. Mr. Pierce, if you would. Noah clicked a button on the laptop. The projector screen behind the judge dropped down. An image appeared. It was a split screen. On the left was a document titled Hale Horizon Trust, 2015 Tax Return. The signature at the bottom was shaky, written in ink. Gordon Hale. On the right was a digital bank transfer authorization from 3 days ago. It authorized the movement of $500,000 to an entity called Cedarline Futures, LLC. The signature was digital, crisp, and black. The signature on the right, Agent Miller explained, was used to attempt a transfer of funds from Mr. Hale's private trust to a shell company controlled by Mr. Trent Caro. The bank flagged it. Our forensic analysis shows that the digital signature on the right is not a new signature. It is a pixel-perfect overlay of a signature Mr. Hale provided on a deed transfer 10 years ago. It was copy-pasted. And the biometric pressure data, the metadata embedded in the stylus file, does not match Mr. Hale's current hand tremor. It matches a hand that is steady, likely Mr. Caro's. Trent let out a noise that sounded like a strangled whimper. This transfer attempt occurred 48 hours ago. Agent Miller continued. Before any guardianship was granted, before any legal authority was established, that is attempted grand larceny and wire fraud. Judge Vance looked at the screen. Then she looked at Vivian and Trent. Her expression had shifted from judicial neutrality to cold fury. Mr. Sanderson, the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. Are you aware that your clients were attempting to liquidate the estate before this hearing even commenced? Cole was sweating. Visible beads of perspiration were rolling down his forehead. He stepped away from Trent as if his client were radioactive. I was not, Your Honor. I was assured that all actions were preliminary administrative preparations. Forging a signature is not administrative, Judge Vance snapped. She banged her gavel, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, I am issuing an immediate temporary restraining order preventing Vivian Caro, Brittany Caro, and Trent Caro from coming within 500 feet of Mr. Gordon Hale or any property owned by the Hale Horizon Trust. She turned to the bailiff. Secure the courtroom. Nobody leaves. Agent Miller, I assume you have warrants. We are printing them now, Your Honor, the agent said. Vivian slumped into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Brittany was staring at the wall, looking like a doll that had been broken. Trent was trying to whisper something to Cole, but the lawyer was busy packing his briefcase, clearly preparing to resign from the case in the next 30 seconds. I looked over at Gordon. He had stopped playing the part. He was sitting up straight, his eyes bright and alert. He looked at the judge, then he looked at me. He gave me a small, barely perceptible nod. It was the same nod he gave me when I nailed a scene in high school. I looked around the room, the wood paneling, the high bench, the flags in the corner. It was just a set. The lawyers were the actors, the judge was the critic, and we had just brought the house down. Mr. Hale, Judge Vance said, her tone softening significantly. I apologize that you had to endure this. Are you well enough to leave on your own? Gordon stood up. He did not need the cane to rise, but he held it anyway, a symbol of the character he was finally retiring. I am quite well, Your Honor, Gordon said, his voice strong and resonant. My granddaughter is driving me. We have a lot of work to do. It seems I have a theater to save. You are free to go, Judge Vance said. But Mr. Caro, Mrs. Caro, you will remain seated until the officers arrive. We walked down the center aisle. I felt the eyes of my family burning into my back. But I did not turn around. I did not look at Vivian's tears or Trent's panic. They were no longer the directors of my life. They were just people who had forgotten their lines. We pushed through the heavy double doors and out into the hallway. The air in the corridor felt cleaner, lighter. That, Gordon said, putting his hat back on, was a very satisfying third act. It is not over yet, I said, checking my phone. Dana was already emailing me the transfer documents for the trust. We still have the gala tonight. The investors still think the project is happening. We need to make sure everyone knows the truth. Oh, I think they will, Gordon said, a mischievous glint in his eye. After all, we still have the footage from the balcony, and I think it is time for a public screening. I smiled. The courtroom drama was over, but the finale was just beginning. The Skyline Crest Hotel ballroom was a glittering cage of denial. Despite the disaster in the courtroom that morning, the second night of the Winter Heights Gala was proceeding exactly as scheduled. It was a testament to the Caro family's delusion, or perhaps their desperation that they believed a few $1,000s worth of imported orchids and an open bar could drown out the sound of a collapsing empire. Vivian, Trent, and Brittany were working the room with a manic energy that bordered on hysteria. They were smiling too wide, laughing too loud, and clutching the elbows of investors with grips that looked painful. They were trying to prove that everything was fine, that the hearing was just a minor administrative hiccup, and that the bulldozers were still coming for my theater. I stood backstage, adjusting the microphone pack clipped to the back of my simple black dress. My hands were steady. 24 hours ago, I would have been shaking. Now, I felt a strange, cold calm. I looked out at the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. In the far back corner, in the shadows near the service entrance, sat Gordon. He was back in his role, slumped in seat G14 of the ballroom, invisible to the waiters rushing past with trays of canapes, but I knew he was there. I knew he was watching, and I knew that for the first time in years, he was not watching a tragedy. He was watching a reckoning. "You are up, Harper," the stage manager whispered, tapping his headset. "Vivian wants this to be quick. 5 minutes on community spirit, then get off so she can do the fundraising pitch." "Do not worry," I said, stepping toward the curtain. "It will be memorable." I walked out onto the stage. The spotlight hit me, blindingly white. I shielded my eyes for a second. looking out at the faces of the city's elite. These were the people who signed the checks. These were the people who decided which neighborhoods lived and which ones died. "Good evening," I said. My voice echoed through the massive room. The chatter died down, replaced by the polite clinking of silverware. "My name is Harper Alexander. For the last 5 years, I have been the director of the Everbridge Community Arts Center. It is a small brick building on Cedar Street. The roof leaks when it rains hard. The heating system sounds like a dying tractor, but inside those walls, something happens that you cannot buy with a platinum credit card." I saw Vivian near the front table. She was sipping champagne, her eyes narrowing at me. She wanted me to be grateful. She wanted me to be the charity case. "We do not build condos," I continued, locking eyes with a developer in the front row. "We build people. We have single mothers who work the night shift at the diner down the street, dropping their kids off for rehearsal because it is the only place they know is safe. We have teenagers who are told by the world that they are statistics, but on our stage, they get to be kings, queens, and heroes. We do not use these children as props for a marketing brochure. We do not use them to sell a lifestyle. We give them a voice." The room was quiet. It was not the polite silence of boredom. It was the heavy silence of truth. "There is a belief in this room," I said, my voice rising, "that progress means erasing the past. That value is only measured in square footage and rental yields. But I am here to tell you that a city without a memory is just a construction site, and the people you are trying to push out, they are the memory." Vivian stood up. She could not take it anymore. She plastered a fake smile on her face and practically ran up the stairs to the stage, grabbing the second microphone from the podium. "Thank you. Harper," she chirped, her voice shrill and over-amplified. She stepped in front of me, blocking me from the audience. "So passionate. Isn't she passionate? Everyone, give her a hand." A smattering of polite applause followed. "What Harper means to say," Vivian continued, breathless, "is that we honor the past by improving it, and that is exactly what Cedarline Lofts is about. We are not just building apartments, we are building a lifestyle. We are going to have a dedicated community space in the lobby. We will have yoga classes for the children on Tuesdays. We will have a digital art wall. It is going to be cleaner, safer, and frankly, much more appropriate for the modern family." She beamed at the audience, waiting for approval. "We are taking the old, rotting bones of this city and giving them a facelift," she said, laughing nervously. "Out with the old, in with the gold. Right." Trent, sitting at the VIP table, raised his glass, sweating profusely. "And to show you our vision," Vivian said, gesturing grandly to the massive LED screen behind us, "we have prepared a special presentation of the future." She nodded to the tech booth. That was the cue, but not for her video. Noah Pierce was in the booth. He had the authorization from the hotel manager, who was terrified of the Attorney General investigators standing behind him to override the feed. The screen did not show a glossy architectural rendering of a glass tower. Instead, a gritty, high-contrast blueprint appeared. It was the floor plan of the Everbridge Theater. Slowly, a red line began to draw over it, crushing the stage, the dressing rooms, the lobby. The red line formed the outline of a luxury condo complex. The audience murmured. This didn't look like a promo. It looked like a crime scene diagram. Then came the sound. It wasn't upbeat corporate stock music. It was the hiss of static, followed by a voice that boomed through the ballroom's concert-quality speakers. It was Trent's voice, clear, arrogant, and undeniable. "As soon as the judge signs the guardianship, we sign to destroy Everbridge. Just 2 signatures, and the whole neighborhood turns into money." The gasp from the audience was audible. Trent dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor. But no one looked at the mess. They were staring at the screen, where the words, 2 signatures, appeared in stark white text. Vivian froze. She looked back at the screen, then at the booth. Stop technical difficulties cut the feed. But the audio continued. Now it was Brittany's voice, echoing with a cruel, mocking laughter. A 2-story gym, a rooftop pool, and no more smell of sweating drama kids. Then Vivian's own voice, recorded in the privacy of her drawing room, stripped of all its public charm. We are building the narrative that he is stuck in a loop. We say he sits in the dark, clapping for plays that are not happening. It paints a picture of a man completely detached from reality. The ballroom erupted. People were standing up. Phones were out. Recording the screen. Recording the stage. The reporters who had been relegated to the back tables were rushing forward, flashes popping like strobe lights. Vivian was shaking. She grabbed the microphone stand for support. This is fake. This is AI. It is a malicious deepfake created by a disgruntled employee. Turn it off. She looked at me, her eyes wild with panic. You did this? You ungrateful little witch. I will sue you for everything you have. You can try, a deep voice said from the floor. Agent Miller walked up the stairs onto the stage. He was flanked by 2 uniformed officers. He didn't look at Vivian. He looked at the audience. He pulled out his badge and held it up to the light. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice projecting without a microphone. I am Special Agent Miller with the State Attorney General's Office, Financial Crimes Division. I am here to confirm that the audio you are hearing is not a fabrication. It is forensic evidence currently entered into the record of an active criminal investigation regarding charity fraud, wire fraud, and predatory guardianship. Vivian dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a deafening thud that made everyone wince. We are currently seizing all electronic devices belonging to the principals of Caro and Crestline Developments, Agent Miller continued calmly. This gala is effectively over as a fundraising event. It is now a crime scene. The room was chaos. Investors were shouting at their aides to cancel checks. Brittany was sobbing at her table, trying to hide her face with a napkin. Trent was arguing with an officer who was asking for his phone, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the back of the room, in the corner. The shadow moved, slowly, deliberately. The man in the old wool coat stood up. He picked up his cane, but he did not lean on it. He placed his fedora on the table. Gordon Hale began to walk toward the stage. He walked down the center aisle, the crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. A hush fell over the room, starting from the back and rippling forward until the only sound was the rhythmic tap of his cane on the carpet. He looked at no one. He walked past Trent, who couldn't even meet his eyes. He walked past Brittany, who shrank into her chair. He walked up the stairs to the stage, moving with a dignity that made the expensive suits around him look like cheap costumes. He stopped center stage, next to me. He looked at Vivian, who was trembling so violently she could barely stand. He looked at her with a profound, crushing sadness. You always forgot the most important rule of the theater. Vivian, he said softly. But in the silence, everyone heard him. You have to know who is in the audience. He turned to the crowd. The spotlight caught the silver in his hair and the steel in his spine. My name is Gordon Hale, he said. For 40 years, this city has told a story about me. You told each other I was a gambler. You told each other I was broken. You told each other I was senile. He paused, letting the weight of his presence settle over the room. For the last 2 years, I have sat in the back corner of the Everbridge Theater. I sat in seat G14. My family told the court this morning that I was clapping for ghosts, that I was lost in the past. He shook his head slowly. I was not lost. I was watching. I was watching to see who would protect the things I built when they thought I was no longer looking. I was watching to see who saw the value in a child's smile, and who only saw the value in the land beneath their feet. He gestured to the screen, where the red outline of the condos was still superimposed over the theater. I never went bankrupt, Gordon announced, his voice ringing out. The Hale Horizon Trust is fully funded. It holds assets in excess of $75 million, and as of tonight, not a single cent of it will ever touch Caro and Crestline Developments. A collective gasp went through the room. Trent looked like he had been punched in the gut. $75 million. The fortune they had tried to steal was real. and it was slipping through their fingers in real time. "I have filed the necessary paperwork with the court and the Attorney General," Gordon continued. "I have invoked the successor clause of my trust. I am designating a new trustee, someone who understands that you build a legacy by lighting a stage for others, not by turning off the lights to save money." He turned to me. His eyes were warm, filled with a pride that took my breath away. "Harper," he said. I stepped forward, tears pricking my eyes. "This is not my stage anymore," Gordon said, loud enough for the back row to hear. "It is yours." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy set of keys. They weren't just keys. They were the master keys to the trust's properties, the warehouses, the art centers, the land parcels. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gordon said to the stunned room, "I give you the new executive director of the Hale Horizon Trust, Ms. Harper Alexander." He pressed the keys into my hand. Then, he took a step back, leaving me alone in the spotlight. Cameras flashed. People began to applaud hesitantly at first, then louder, a wave of genuine respect rising over the wreckage of the Caro family's greed. I looked down at Vivian. She was being escorted off the stage by an officer, her face a mask of ruin. I looked at the investors, who were now looking at me with a sudden, desperate reassessment of my value. But I looked past them all. I looked to the corner of the room. It was empty now. The chair was pushed back. The man who had sat there for 2 years had finally stepped into the light, and he had brought the whole truth with him. The gala was over. The real work was about to begin. The silence in the private conference room of the Skyline Crest Hotel was heavy, cleaner, and far more terrifying than the noise of the gala outside. The crystal chandeliers were gone, replaced by the harsh, buzzing fluorescence of office lighting. There was no champagne here. There were no canapes. There was just a long mahogany table, and on it lay the wreckage of the Caro dynasty. Vivian, Trent, and Brittany sat on one side. They looked like statues that had been left out in the rain, eroded, pale and shivering. Their expensive evening wear, which had looked so powerful under the ballroom spotlights, now looked like costumes from a play that had closed early. Opposite them sat Gordon, Dana Whitfield, myself, and the 2 investigators from the Attorney General's office. Agent Miller placed a stack of documents on the table. The sound of the paper hitting the wood was the only noise in the room. "We have categorized the initial findings," Agent Miller said, his tone devoid of any theatricality. "This is no longer a civil dispute regarding guardianship. This is a criminal investigation into conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and the misappropriation of charitable assets. As of 20 minutes ago, the accounts of Cedarline Futures have been frozen. The bank has suspended all trading privileges for Mr. Trent Caro, pending an internal audit, and we have issued subpoenas for all personal devices, email servers, and financial records belonging to the 3 of you." Trent let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. He looked at the investigator, his eyes wide and wet. "It was Cole," Trent stammered, pointing a shaking finger at the empty chair where their lawyer should have been. "Cole Sanderson advised us. He said it was standard procedure. He said it was tax optimization. I was just following legal counsel. I did not know the signature overlay was illegal. I thought it was a proxy function." "You forged a biometric signature to move $500,000 from a protected trust," Dana said, not looking up from her files. "Ignorance of the law is not a defense. Trent, especially when you are on tape bragging about how easy it was." "I just wanted a better neighborhood," Brittany burst out, tears streaming down her face and ruining her spray tan. "Is that a crime? I just wanted a place where young families could live. I wanted a gym. I wanted to improve the city. I did not know about the bank stuff. I just handled the marketing." "You laughed about bulldozing a community center," I said quietly. "You called it a rotting building. You knew exactly what was happening." Vivian slammed her hand on the table. She did not look at the investigators. She looked straight at me. Her eyes were filled with a venom so pure it was almost impressive. "You did this," she hissed. "You ungrateful, jealous little brat. We took you in. We fed you. We clothed you. And this is how you repay us, by destroying your own family. You always had your head in the clouds. Harper, always dreaming about your little plays and your rotted stage. You were jealous because we actually built things. We created value. And now you have burned it all down because you could not stand to see us succeed. The room went deadly quiet. I waited for the old shame to hit me. I waited to feel like the poor relation, the charity case, but the feeling never came. All I saw was a desperate woman trying to manipulate a script that had already been rewritten. Gordon shifted in his chair. He did not shout. He did not bang his cane. He simply leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. I did not burn down the family. Vivian, Gordon said. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a final judgment. And neither did Harper. You did. You burned it down the moment you looked at your father and saw a bank account instead of a human being. I refuse to let you use the word family as a shield for your greed any longer. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I have petitioned the court to sever all financial ties between the Caro family and the Hale Horizon Trust, Gordon said. Whatever inheritance you thought you were entitled to, whatever safety net you thought would catch you when you fell, it is gone. You wanted to stand on your own. You wanted to build your own skylines. Now is your chance. You will do it without a single penny of my money. Vivian gasped, clutching her chest as if she had been physically struck. Daddy, you cannot. We have mortgages. We have loans. The liquidity. That is a problem for your own accountants, Gordon said. Dana Whitfield cleared her throat and opened the leather portfolio in front of her. Furthermore, Dana said, sliding a document across the table toward them, Mr. Hale has executed a new directive regarding the administration of the trust. This document was filed with the probate court this morning, prior to the gala. It names a sole successor trustee and administrator for the Hale Horizon Trust, effective immediately upon the dismissal of your guardianship petition. She tapped the paper. The new administrator is Ms. Harper Alexander. I stared at the paper. I knew this was coming. We had discussed it in the penthouse, but seeing my name in black and white, next to the words, sole trustee, made the room spin. I was not just the director of a small theater anymore. I was the guardian of a legacy worth $75 million. Vivian stared at the document, her face draining of all color. You gave it to her. She is a drama teacher. She does not know the first thing about asset management. She knows the value of a promise, Gordon said, and she knows how to spot a fake. That is more than I can say for anyone else at this table. I looked at the document. Then I looked at my family. I saw the fear in Brittany's eyes, not for herself, but the panic of a mother realizing her safety net had just been cut. I thought about her 2 children, my second cousins. They were innocent. They were just like the kids at Everbridge caught in a drama they did not write. Wait, I said. Everyone looked at me. I have a condition, I said, turning to Gordon. Name it, Starling, Gordon said. The children, I said. Brittany's kids, and the scholarship programs. If we cut them off completely, the kids suffer. They lose their schools. They lose their stability. I do not want to be like Vivian. I do not want to punish the children for the sins of the parents. Gordon smiled. It was the smile of a director who knew his lead actress had just nailed the most important line of the play. I thought you might say that, Gordon said. Which is why I have already established the Meredith Hale Scholarship Fund, named after your grandmother. It is a separate, irrevocable trust. It covers the educational expenses for Brittany's children, and it expands the scholarship program for the students at Everbridge. The money is managed by an independent third-party board. The parents cannot touch a dime of it. It goes directly to the schools. He looked at Brittany. Your children will be educated. They will be safe. But you will not see a cent of that money for your country clubs or your luxury cars. The cycle of using children as leverage ends tonight. Brittany put her head down on the table and wept. It was the first genuine emotion she had shown in years. Agent Miller stood up, signaling that the emotional part of the evening was over and the legal reality was about to begin. Here is the situation, Miller said to Vivian and Trent. We have the audio, we have the bank records, we have the forged metadata. You can spend the next 10 years fighting this and likely go to prison for 15, or you can cooperate. You will admit to the attempted fraud. You will pay full restitution for any funds misappropriated over the last 5 years. You will resign from all corporate boards associated with the development projects, and you will accept a plea deal that involves significant probation and community service. He paused, looking at their terrified faces. And when I say community service, I do not mean sitting on a gala committee. I mean picking up trash on the highway. I mean scrubbing graffiti. Vivian looked at Trent. Trent looked at the floor. They knew the game was over. The king had fallen. The queen had fallen. The board was empty. Where do we sign? Trent whispered. They signed the preliminary agreements with shaking hands. Their faces were white. Their posture collapsed. The arrogance that had defined them for decades had evaporated, leaving behind 3 small, scared people in a cold room. We are done here, Gordon said. Standing up, he took his hat from the table. Come, Harper, we have a theater to open. We walked out of the hotel, leaving them with the investigators. The night air was crisp and cold. The snow had stopped falling. Across the street, the Starlight Towers stood dark and silent, our war room no longer needed. A few weeks later, the air in the Everbridge Community Arts Center smelled different. It still smelled of sawdust and old velvet, but the underlying scent of decay was gone, replaced by the fresh, sharp smell of new lumber and possibility. I stood on the center of the stage, looking out at the empty auditorium. The seats had been reupholstered, the ceiling had been patched, the ghost light was off, because the main rig was blazing with new LED instruments that Gordon had insisted on ordering the morning after the trial. The heavy stage door creaked open, and Gordon walked in. He was not wearing his old, threadbare coat. He was wearing a sharp navy blazer and a scarf I had knitted for him. He walked down the aisle, his cane tapping a rhythm on the new carpet. The contractors finished the roof on the South Ward Center today, he said, walking up the stairs to the stage. And the dance studio in the Heights is ready for mirrors. That is fast, I said, smiling. You drive a hard bargain, grandfather. I just know how to direct a crew, he winked. Speaking of which, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a large brass ring. It was heavy, jingling with at least 20 keys. I think you're going to need these, he said, holding them out to me. What are they? I asked. Keys, he said. To the warehouse on 5th, the old cinema on Main, the abandoned textile factory by the river, all properties owned by the trust, all spaces that have been sitting dark, waiting for someone to turn the lights on. I took the keys. They felt heavy, but it was a good weight. It was the weight of responsibility. You want me to turn them all into theaters? I asked. I want you to turn them into whatever the city needs, Gordon said. Galleries, youth centers, studios. You decide. You are the one who knows where the shadows are. You decide which corners need to be lit up. He looked out at the house. We spent a lot of time worrying about the people in the spotlight, he said softly. But you taught me something, Harper. You taught me that the most important people are the ones sitting in the dark, waiting for a story that tells them they matter. I learned from the best, I said, squeezing his hand. Tonight is the night, he said, checking his watch. Are we ready? We are ready, I said. House opens in 5 minutes. I walked to the edge of the stage and looked at the back corner, seat G14. It was no longer just a worn velvet chair. I had placed a small, brass plaque on the back of the seat. It caught the light from the stage, reserved for the one who stayed to watch when nobody else did. The doors opened. The noise of the crowd flooded in. But it wasn't just the wealthy donors or the parents of the cast. It was everyone. I saw construction workers still in their boots. I saw nurses in scrubs. I saw the teenagers from the skate park. I saw the neighborhood grandmothers. They filled the rows, talking, laughing, shaking snow off their coats. Vivian had wanted a sanitized lobby for the elite. We had given her a packed house of the real. Gordon walked down the stairs and took his seat in the corner. He didn't hide in the shadows this time. He sat proudly, nodding to the people around him. He looked up at the booth, where Noah was giving me a thumbs up. He looked at the stage, where I stood ready to call the first cue. I realized then that revenge wasn't about destroying Vivian or Trent. That was just paperwork. True revenge was this. It was building a stage so big, so bright, and so loud that they could never turn it off again. It was taking the script they had written for us, a tragedy of failure and loneliness, and rewriting it into an anthem. I put on my headset. "Stand by lights," I whispered. "Stand by sound." I looked at Gordon. He tipped his hat. "Go," I said. The lights came up, and the show began. Thank you so much for listening to this story about Harper and her grandfather's incredible journey. If you enjoyed this tale of justice and family secrets, please let us know in the comments where you are listening from. We would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel. Like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people.